This is our momentary time sampling data sheet. We would use something like this when going into the school and observing something like circle time or a group activity or some type of even independent task. The first thing we would do with this momentary time sampling data sheet is write the learner's name. My learner's name is X. I'm the observer, so I'm going to write Shayna, the date and the time as well of circle time. Then in terms of momentary time sampling, what we do during momentary time sampling is we would just look at the clock or set a timer going up so that it doesn't beep every single minute. We would just record the presence or absence of a behavior at the very end of the interval. So say for instance, I am taking data every single minute. Now I could take data every 15 seconds if I wanted to, 15, 30, 45, 1 minute, etc. For the purpose of this example though, I'm just going to pretend it's every single minute. I'm also going to take data on 3 separate students. I'm going to take data on my learner, so learner X. I'm also going to take data on a really high functioning student, so a really high achiever, the goody two-shoes sitting at the front of the room. And then I'm also going to take data on a student number 3, so somebody who's pretty low, so the student at the back of the circle time who might be picking his shoe. So I'm going to take data on all 3 because I want to know where my learner fits in with the rest of them, right? Is my learner up there with the goody two-shoes? He better not be higher than the goody two-shoes in the class, because if he is higher, then he's actually going to look odd, and then I want to make sure that he's actually either on task with the low learner or above the low learner ideally. So what happens here is circle time starts and I look at the clock and it is 3 o'clock. At 3:01, when that second hand gets up to the 12, I'm just going to look up. I'm going to look at my learner, and my learner is looking at the teacher, so he's on task during the circle time. I'm looking at the goody two-shoes, the higher achiever in the class, and he's on task as well. And then I'm looking at the lower learner at the back of the class, and he's on task during minute 1. Then I'm going to do anything else. I'm looking and watching the class, etc., etc. But then when it gets to minute 2, I'm going to look up again specifically at these 3 learners. My learner is not on task. My learner is looking away, trying to engage in some other behavior. The, high achiever at the front of the class is on task, and the low learner is on task as well. Minute 3 comes around. At the end of minute 3, I'm going to look up. I'm going to see what's happening. The high learner is and the low learner isn't, etc. So I'm going to get my data throughout all of these intervals. Now, circle time may be 15 minutes or circle time may be 5 minutes, and that's where you may want to modify these intervals being either 15 seconds or 30 seconds in length. I'm adding up all of my data. My learner isn't very on task. This learner is on task but fades a little bit. There we go, and the lower learner isn't on task much at all. After I get the data on all of these, I'm going to look at this, and my learner X got 5 out of 15 correct, which in math skills is about 30%. The higher learner got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 out of 15, which is a lot harder to calculate, but approximately 72% or so. And you've got the lower learner who's got, again, 5 out of 15. So what I'm looking at here is I could make a graph really quickly. So pretend I had a graph. I would plot the different learners. So here's my learner, here's the higher learner, and here's the lower learner. So this would be the high learner, this is my X learner, and this is the low learner. And I could plot that on a graph. So my learner got 33%. And so did the other learner, and the higher learner got 70-ish. So we're looking to make sure that this learner, and you could plot this over time, so if the lower learner looks something like this, and the higher learner looks something like this, in really rough terms, we want to make sure that our learner falls somewhere in here, ideally. If our learner drops down here, we know we have to target something or we need to intervene. If our learner is way up here above the highest student in the class, that's going to look really odd as well. So we need to make sure that our learner falls somewhere in there.